Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy my new stories every day. I was never one to suspect things. My wife, Rachel, and I had always shared a solid bond, or at least, I thought we had. We had been married for 8 years, and life had settled into a predictable rhythm. I worked in IT for a small tech firm, while she had a marketing job that sometimes required her to travel. Our home was comfortable, with enough room to grow if we ever decided to have kids, though we hadn't made that leap yet. Things seemed stable, ordinary, like the kind of life most people aspired to. It wasn't until recently that things began to feel off. I first noticed the changes in Rachel's behavior several months ago, but I brushed them aside, telling myself it was just the stress of work. She seemed more distracted, less interested in spending time together. Her laugh, once genuine and warm, now felt forced, and more often than not, she had her eyes glued to her phone. But I didn't want to believe anything was wrong. After all, we were both busy people, and I assumed it was just a rough patch that would smooth out in time. But it didn't. In fact, things got worse. Rachel started staying late at the office more often, and there were business trips that popped up unexpectedly. They weren't unusual in her line of work, but something about how she handled them felt different. She would tell me about them at the last minute, barely giving me any details. "It's just a client meeting," she'd say casually, brushing it off as if it didn't matter. But it did matter. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, something was wrong. The final straw came one Friday evening when she texted me that she would be late again. "Hey babe, running late at the office. Be home soon," the message read. It was simple, direct, and on the surface, there was nothing strange about it. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was a lie. I had no evidence, no real reason to believe it, but my instincts told me otherwise. That night, after Rachel came home and went to bed, I found myself lying awake, unable to sleep. I kept replaying the past few months in my head, the late nights, the vague excuses, the way she had been so attached to her phone lately. Every piece of the puzzle seemed to fit together in a way that I didn't want to acknowledge. I tried to push the thoughts away, convincing myself that I was overreacting. But the next morning, when I saw her laptop sitting on the kitchen counter, unlocked and unattended, I couldn't resist. I wasn't the kind of person who snooped through someone's private things, but this was different. This was my marriage, my life. As I opened her email, my heart raced. At first, there was nothing out of the ordinary, just work correspondence, reminders, and newsletters. But then I saw a thread, buried deep in her inbox, marked with a star. It was from a man named David, someone she had briefly mentioned in passing as a colleague. But the way they were talking, it wasn't about work. The first email I clicked on was harmless enough. David asking her if she was free to meet for a drink after a meeting. But as I scrolled further down, the messages became more intimate. They talked about stolen moments, about late-night rendezvous in hotel rooms. My heart pounded in my chest as I read the words. Rachel had been cheating on me. I couldn't believe it. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it all. How long had this been going on? How could she do this to me, to us? My hands shook as I read each message, every word a betrayal, every detail a stab in the back. I felt sick to my stomach, my mind spinning out of control. When Rachel came downstairs, I closed the laptop and acted as if nothing had happened. I couldn't confront her, not yet. I needed time to process what I had just learned, to figure out what I was going to do next. My mind raced with possibilities. Maybe I was reading too much into it, maybe there was an explanation. But deep down, I knew the truth. There was no mistaking the intimacy in those emails. Rachel had crossed a line, and there was no coming back from it. For the next few days, I tried to carry on as if everything was normal. Rachel went about her routine, oblivious to the fact that I knew. But inside, I was falling apart. Every time I looked at her, I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. How could she smile at me, kiss me goodnight, knowing she had been with someone else. How long had she been lying to me? I wanted answers, but I wasn't sure I was ready to hear them. Then, one evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I had been replaying everything in my mind for days, and the anger had built to a boiling point. I waited until Rachel came home, sat her down, and asked her point blank, "Who is David?" The color drained from her face. She stared at me, wide-eyed, like a deer caught in headlights. "What do you mean?" she stammered, trying to feign ignorance, but I wasn't buying it. I grabbed the laptop from the table and opened the emails. Her silence spoke volumes. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized there was no use denying it. She confessed to everything, how it started, why she did it, how long it had been going on. She cried, saying she was sorry, that it was a mistake, that she still loved me. But the words rang hollow. All I could think about was the betrayal. I had trusted her completely, and she had destroyed that trust. I didn't know what to say, so I walked out. I needed time to think, to decide what my next move would be. But one thing was clear, I couldn't let this slide. I couldn't just forgive and forget. Not this time. That night, as I sat in my car, staring at the dark, empty streets, a plan began to form in my mind. I wasn't going to scream or yell or throw things. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break down. No, I was going to handle this differently. I was going to get my revenge. I spent the night in my car, parked on the far side of a lot that overlooked the city. The skyline glimmered in the distance, but all I could feel was the cold, empty darkness closing in around me. I kept thinking about Rachel's face when I confronted her, the way her tears fell silently, how she stammered out her apologies. But no amount of crying or regret could take back what she'd done. I wanted to forgive her. Part of me wanted to believe that we could somehow fix this, that it was a mistake, a one-time lapse in judgment. But the emails told a different story. This had been going on for months, secret meetings, business trips that were nothing more than excuses to spend time with David. It was planned, deliberate, and unforgivable. The sun was just beginning to rise when I made the drive back home. Rachel was already up when I walked through the door, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She looked at me like she was expecting me to say something, either to explode in anger or collapse into tears. But I did neither. Instead, I went upstairs, grabbed some clothes, and told her I needed space. I wasn't going to play this game of emotional ping-pong. I needed time to think, and I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of watching me break down. She didn't stop me. In fact, she didn't say anything at all. She just stood there, arms wrapped around herself, watching as I packed my bag. I didn't know what she was thinking, and frankly, I didn't care. By the time I arrived at the apartment I had rented downtown, my head was clearer. I knew what I had to do. Revenge was the only option now. Not some petty, impulsive act, but something that would make her feel the full weight of her betrayal. Something that would turn her life upside down the way she had turned mine. Over the next few days, I made arrangements. First, I met with my lawyer. Rachel didn't know it, but I had already begun the process of transferring our shared assets into my name. The house, our savings, everything. My lawyer assured me that with her affair, I had more than enough grounds for a favorable divorce. She wouldn't get a dime more than I was willing to give her. While the legal side was taken care of, I also started planning my exit from our shared life. I set up a new bank account and began moving money from our joint savings into it in small, unnoticed increments. At the same time, I subtly shifted ownership of the house and other investments. I knew Rachel would be too preoccupied with her own guilt and her relationship with David to notice any of these changes. After all, she thought I was still trying to process what had happened. She had no idea I was already 10 steps ahead. I hadn't spoken to her since the day I left. She had tried calling a few times, sent texts asking if we could talk, but I ignored them. The truth was, I had nothing left to say. Every time I thought about those emails, about her being with someone else while I sat at home, thinking we were just going through a rough patch, it only solidified my resolve. There was no saving this marriage. There was only one way forward, destroying the life she thought she could have. One evening, while sitting in the dimly lit living room of my apartment, I thought back to the first signs of trouble. I should have seen it earlier, the business trips, the sudden grooming rituals, the way she would disappear into her phone for hours. It all seemed so obvious now, but at the time, I was too blinded by trust. Too wrapped up in the illusion that everything was fine. It made me feel stupid, like I'd been played for a fool. That's when the anger really hit. But anger wasn't going to fix anything. Revenge, though, that would. I started small. Rachel still had no idea that the divorce papers were already being prepared. In the meantime, I kept moving our money, shifting things around to ensure that when the time came, she'd be left with little more than her personal belongings. She had been so caught up in her affair that I doubted she even noticed how little access she had to our finances now. That was the beauty of it. She wouldn't know what hit her until it was too late. Then came the next phase of my plan. I hired a private investigator to follow her and gather evidence of her affair. Sure, I already had the emails, but I needed more, something that would make any argument from her side impossible. Something that would paint a clear picture of her infidelity, should it come to court. And the investigator delivered. Photos, dates, times, there was no escaping the reality of what she had done. I had all the ammunition I needed. As the weeks went by, I continued to keep my distance. I stayed at the apartment, ignoring Rachel's increasingly desperate attempts to contact me. She had no idea what I was planning, and that was exactly how I wanted it. I needed her to feel safe, to believe that there was still a chance we could work things out. I wanted her to be blindsided by the divorce, to be hit with the full weight of what was coming. In the meantime, I started preparing for the final confrontation. I was going to leave nothing to chance. The house was mine, the assets were mine, and Rachel was going to walk away with nothing more than the consequences of her betrayal. Finally, after weeks of preparation, the day came. I invited Rachel to meet me for dinner at her favorite restaurant, a place we had frequented many times during the happier years of our marriage. She accepted, probably thinking this was the first step toward reconciliation. I could tell by the tone of her voice that she was hopeful, maybe even excited. That evening, as I sat at the table, waiting for her to arrive, I rehearsed what I was going to say. I didn't want to lose my cool. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me angry or hurt. This was about control, taking control of the situation and ensuring that I walked away with everything while she was left with nothing. Rachel walked in, dressed in a way that reminded me of how she used to look when we first met, elegant, confident, beautiful. It struck me how much of a stranger she had become to me. The woman standing in front of me was not the woman I had married. Not anymore. "Hey," she said softly, taking a seat across from me. "Hey," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. For a while, we talked casually, small talk about work, about life, like nothing was wrong. She probably thought we were on the verge of making amends. I could see the hope in her eyes, the way she leaned in, trying to reconnect. Then, after we ordered, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the divorce papers. "What's this?" she asked, her voice trembling as she took the envelope from my hands. "It's over, Rachel," I said calmly. "I've filed for divorce." Her face went pale as she opened the envelope and began reading the papers. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with shock. You're serious?" she stammered. "As serious as you were when you decided to cheat on me," I said, my voice steady. "You think I didn't know?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a moment, she looked like the Rachel I had fallen in love with all those years ago. Vulnerable. Scared. But it was too late for that. I had already made my decision. "You can't do this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, we can fix this. I made a mistake. I love you." I shook my head slowly. "No, Rachel. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." And with that, I stood up, leaving her sitting there with the divorce papers in her trembling hands. There was nothing left to say. I had played my part. Now it was her turn to deal with the fallout. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully after handing Rachel the divorce papers. There was no more waiting, no more second-guessing my decision. I had put the wheels in motion, and now, I just had to watch it all unfold. Rachel, on the other hand, had to face a reality she probably never thought was coming. The day after the dinner, I expected Rachel to contact me immediately. I thought she would try to reason with me, beg me to reconsider, or even lash out in anger. But there was nothing. My phone stayed silent. I wasn't sure what to make of it. Was she in denial? Or had she already accepted that there was no way back? I didn't reach out. The silence was exactly what I needed. It gave me the clarity to finalize everything else on my end. My lawyer had assured me that the papers were airtight. There was no way Rachel could fight it, especially with the evidence I had collected. The investigators' pictures and the email exchanges made her affair with David undeniable, and that gave me leverage. But while she stayed quiet, I couldn't help but wonder what she was planning. Rachel was never one to back down easily, and I knew her well enough to know that she wouldn't just let this go without a fight. So, I waited. I kept checking my phone every few hours, expecting the inevitable storm that was sure to come. It wasn't until 3 days later that Rachel finally reached out. She sent a long, emotionally charged email. I stared at the notification for a while, debating whether I even wanted to read it. Part of me wanted to just ignore her, let the legal process handle everything from here on out. But curiosity got the better of me. I needed to know where her head was at. The email started predictably. Rachel apologized, again. She admitted that the affair with David had been a terrible mistake. She talked about how lonely she had felt in our marriage, how she felt neglected and unappreciated, how she had looked for comfort in the wrong place. She tried to explain herself, rationalizing why she had done what she did. But I didn't care about her reasons. Her betrayal couldn't be excused, no matter how she spun it. Then came the part one was waiting for. She wanted to talk, to meet up again and discuss things properly. She asked if we could work out an arrangement that didn't involve going through the courts, something amicable for both of us. I could almost hear the desperation in her words. She knew what was coming, she had read the papers. She knew I was taking the house, the assets, and leaving her with barely anything. And now she was trying to save whatever scraps she could. I didn't respond right away. I needed time to think. There was a part of me that wanted to meet her, to face her one last time and see if she really understood the depth of what she had done. But I knew that meeting up would only give her more room to manipulate the situation, to try and play on my emotions. And after everything I had been through, I wasn't about to let her have that kind of power over me again. Instead, I forwarded the email to my lawyer and asked for his advice. His response was swift and direct: don't meet her. Let the courts handle it. You've already done the hard part, don't give her an opening to change things now. He was right, of course. This wasn't about making things amicable. This was about her trying to salvage what little she could, and I wasn't going to make it easy for her. Over the next week, the divorce process started moving forward. Rachel's lawyer reached out to mine, but everything was kept formal. No personal messages, no emotional pleas, just the legal back and forth that would lead to the dissolution of our marriage. It felt cold, but that was exactly what I needed. I didn't want emotions involved. I just wanted this to be over. But just when I thought things were going to proceed smoothly, Rachel made her move. One afternoon, while I was at work, I got a call from a mutual friend of ours, Jessica. I hadn't spoken to Jessica in months, not since Rachel and I had started drifting apart. But her voice sounded urgent, almost panicked. "Mark, you need to know something," she said, her words rushed. "Rachel's been talking to people, she's been saying you're trying to destroy her, that you're taking everything and leaving her with nothing. She's trying to paint you as the bad guy." I sat there, stunned for a moment, my mind racing. Rachel was playing the victim card. I should have seen it coming. She couldn't control the legal process, so now she was trying to control the narrative. She was telling our friends that I was the one who had pushed her to cheat, that I had been emotionally unavailable, that I was the reason our marriage had fallen apart. Jessica continued, "She's trying to get people on her side. I just thought you should know, because, well, it's not true. I know it's not true. But she's desperate, and she's making it sound like you're out to ruin her." I thanked Jessica for the warning, but inside, I was seething. Rachel had crossed a line. It wasn't enough for her to cheat on me, now she was trying to destroy my reputation as well. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking with anger. She wanted a war. Fine. She was going to get one. That night, I met with my lawyer again and laid everything out. I told him about Rachel's smear campaign, about how she was trying to make me look like the villain in all of this. He listened carefully, then nodded. "This changes things," he said. "If she's going public with these lies, we need to get ahead of it. We'll need to present the evidence of her affair, make sure people see the truth before she spins it any further." I knew what that meant. It meant airing our dirty laundry for the world to see. It meant exposing Rachel's infidelity, making sure everyone knew what she had done. It was going to get ugly, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. But at this point, I didn't have a choice. Rachel had started this fight, and now I had to finish it. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings, strategy sessions, and phone calls. My lawyer and I prepared everything, copies of the emails, the investigators' photos, even the financial records showing how Rachel had siphoned money for her affair. We were building an airtight case, and once we were ready, we made our move. It didn't take long for the truth to come out. As soon as the evidence was presented, the tables turned. Rachel's attempts to play the victim fell apart when people saw the proof of what she had done. Friends who had sympathized with her at first began to distance themselves. Word spread quickly, and suddenly, Rachel was the one facing judgment, not me. I didn't take any pleasure in it. Watching her fall apart, watching her world crumble, it wasn't as satisfying as I had thought it would be. But it was necessary. She had forced my hand, and now she had to deal with the consequences of her actions. Rachel didn't contact me again after that. The divorce proceeded without any further attempts at reconciliation or negotiation. She signed the papers, probably realizing that there was nothing left for her to fight for. She had lost everything, her marriage, her reputation, and the life we had built together. And when it was all over, when the divorce was finalized and the dust had settled, I felt a strange sense of emptiness. I had won. I had taken everything from her. But instead of feeling victorious, all I felt was tired. It was a hollow victory, one that had cost me more than I had anticipated. Rachel was gone from my life, but the scars of her betrayal remained. After the divorce was finalized, everything fell into a strange kind of quiet. I got the house, the savings, and most of our shared assets. Rachel moved out with nothing but the clothes on her back and whatever dignity she had left, though even that was questionable after how things ended. I thought I would feel triumphant, victorious after getting everything I had fought for, but instead, I felt hollow. The kind of emptiness that settles in when you fought a war and, even though you've won, the battlefield is still littered with wreckage. I tried to throw myself into work, convincing myself that this was a fresh start. No more lies, no more betrayal. Just me, moving forward with my life, free from the past. But the truth was, the silence was unbearable. The house that had once been full of life, of conversation and laughter, was now just a place where I existed. I thought that revenge would heal the wound Rachel left, but it hadn't. It only deepened the scar. I spent my days going through the motions, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. There were moments when I even wondered if I had made the right choice, if maybe I should have taken a different path. Not forgiven her, but at least tried to leave on better terms. But then I would remember those emails, the lies, the months of deceit, and the anger would return. No, I had done what I had to do. I was sure of it. Or at least, I was until I got the letter. It arrived one afternoon, a simple white envelope with no return address. At first, I thought it was some sort of spam, another piece of junk mail that would go straight into the trash. But something about the handwriting, elegant, almost too formal, caught my attention. I tore it open and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The letter was short, no more than a few sentences, but the moment I read it, my heart stopped. Mark. You think it's over, but it's only just beginning. You've been so focused on Rachel that you didn't see what was really happening. Let's meet. You'll want to know the truth. D. I stared at the letter, my mind racing. D. It had to be David, Rachel's affair partner. But why would he contact me now? What truth was he talking about? Hadn't I already uncovered everything? My first instinct was to ignore it, to throw the letter away and move on. I had no desire to meet with David, no interest in anything he had to say. But something gnawed at me. A small voice in the back of my head whispered that there was more to this than I realized, that I had missed something important. Reluctantly, I texted the number included in the letter, agreeing to meet. The reply came quickly, an address, a time. A small cafe on the outskirts of the city. When the day came, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. I didn't know what David could possibly have to say that I didn't already know, but I needed to find out. I needed closure, even if it meant seeing the man who had wrecked my marriage. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived, save for a few people huddled around their coffee cups. I scanned the room until I saw him sitting in the back corner, a cup of coffee in front of him, eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. He looked different from how I had imagined him. Younger, maybe, less confident than I expected. But there was something about him that made me uneasy. I sat down across from him, not saying a word. He took off his sunglasses, revealing a pair of tired, bloodshot eyes. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, he leaned in slightly, his voice low. "You don't know everything," David said, his words clipped. "You think Rachel was the problem, that she betrayed you. But she wasn't acting alone." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "She had an affair. You and her. That's all there is to it." He shook his head slowly. "No. I didn't come here to tell you about Rachel. I came to tell you about someone else. Someone you've overlooked this whole time." I felt my pulse quicken. "Who?" David reached into his pocket and slid a photograph across the table. I stared at it for a moment before picking it up. It was a picture of a woman. Blonde, tall, with a familiar smile. But it wasn't Rachel. It was Jessica. "Jessica?" I said, confusion creeping into my voice. "What does she have to do with this?" David sighed. "She's the one who orchestrated all of it. The affair, the fallout, everything." I felt my stomach drop. That doesn't make any sense. Jessica's been my friend for years. She told me about Rachel's lies. She warned me. "She warned you because she wanted you to find out," David interrupted. "She planted the seeds of doubt. She's the reason Rachel and I got involved in the first place. She wanted to tear you apart, Mark. She wanted you to feel exactly how you feel right now, betrayed, broken. She used both of us to do it." I sat there, dumbfounded. "Why? Why would she do that? David hesitated for a moment before answering. Because she's in love with you. She's been in love with you for years. But you never saw her that way. She thought that if Rachel was out of the picture, if you were hurt enough, you'd finally turn to her. She manipulated everything, Rachel, me, all of it. The room spun around me as his words sank in. Jessica. The one person I thought had been on my side. The one person I trusted to give me the truth. She had been the one pulling the strings all along. I didn't know, David continued. At first, I thought Rachel was just unhappy, that she was looking for a way out. But the more I talked to her, the more I realized that Jessica had been in her ear the whole time. Pushing her toward me, encouraging her to cheat. She played us both. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process what I was hearing. Could it be true? Had I been so blind that I hadn't seen what was right in front of me? She used us, Mark, David said quietly. And now she's going to come for you. She's going to try to worm her way into your life, act like the savior, the one who stood by you through it all. But she's the reason any of this happened. I didn't know what to believe. Part of me wanted to deny it, to say that David was lying, trying to deflect blame. But deep down, I knew. I knew because it all fit. The way Jessica had been so quick to tell me about Rachel, the way she had stayed close through the whole ordeal, always offering a shoulder to cry on. I left the cafe in a daze, my mind spinning with the realization of how deeply I had been played. Rachel had betrayed me, yes. But the real betrayal had come from the person I had trusted the most. When I got home that night, there was a message waiting for me from Jessica. Hey, just checking in. Let me know if you want to grab dinner sometime. I'm here for you, as always. I stared at the message, my heart heavy with the weight of everything I now knew. Jessica's game was far from over. She had won this round, but the next move was mine. And this time, I wasn't going to be caught off guard.